Efforts are being made to tighten regulations and ensure that the real estate option of the CBI program functions how it was intended, to prevent abuse. In recent times, a number of empty, unfinished buildings have been the result of what was supposed to be major developments under the CBI program. Attorney General Garth Wilkin, while speaking at the Prime Minister's press conference on Wednesday, said the safeguards are now being followed to prevent such abuse of the program.
In those regulations, what developers are required to do now is that they have to place money received from the sale of real estate units into an escrow account, and the administration of the Citizenship by Investment program will now monitor the progress of the projects, such that a developer does not sell 20 units, for example, and not build anything. What will happen is that money will go into escrow, and when the developer has proved that they have, for example, finished the foundation, then certain amount of money will be released. If they prove that they reached to the roof stage, certain amount of money will be released. That process was not completed in the past, and that is why we have a lot of white elephants in the country, meaning projects that started or were funded by Citizenship by Investment funds, and they simply were not completed.
The Attorney General also pointed out that the changes to the legislation will also affect the sale of units under the program.
The other element of the new regulations that was created to prevent that from happening again is that not only is there escrow process that will be enforced seriously, there will also be a distribution of units process. So for example, if you're a developer and you believe that you can sell 1,000 real estate units or 1,000 buildings in your real estate project, you will not be given access to sell those 1,000 units at the beginning of your project, like was done in the past. What you will do, you will be given a certain amount of units, for example, 50. You'll be able to put those on the market. And until you complete a certain phase of your construction, you will not get the next 50. So there will be a staggered approach to the actual issuance of the units that you can sell on the market. And all of that was done to prevent what has happened in the past, such that real estate developers were selling off plan and then building one part of their project and not completing the project.
He assured that the local service providers and developers are happy with the tightening of the regulations.
Since the regulations were gazetted, we had further discussions in this very room with the service providers, the local service providers, as well as the developers. Very fruitful, frank discussions, which they were happy to have with us. And there are a couple of things that we are going to address, and we are going to amend the regulations very shortly, just to address those small issues that were raised. But I can tell you that the local service providers and the local developers and international developers are very happy with the strengthening of the program, because real developers, meaning the persons who actually want to build projects and create jobs and create construction in the country, are now able to do it.
Critics have long argued that this option of the program was abused to the point where developers get a passport under the CBI program, but the project they were developing was left unfinished. Andre Huey, SKN Newsline. The discrepancy regarding the results in at least one constituency in the recently held Nevis Island Assembly elections may be a sign of the swing against the incumbent Concerned Citizens Movement, the CCM, says political analyst Peter Wickham. He was addressing the election petitions filed by the Nevis Reformation Party, the NRP, while a guest on the Caribbean Current Affairs show The Narrative.
We have an interesting situation emerging where there's been a court case filed in one of the seats that the NRP lost, where they are alleging that there was an outcome in which you had more seats, more votes counted than were declared as having voted. And the Premier himself acknowledged that you had one number which related to counted votes and spoiled votes, and then you had a number plus, I believe it was 6, that amounts to votes that were supposed to have been cast, which suggests that more people voted than voted. And that is something that we have challenges explaining. They're essentially putting this to the court and saying, look, we don't know how it happened, but we know that something fishy has happened, and they're asking the court to declare that seat null and void, and to have a re-election in that seat. Now, in a situation where that happens, I think it could be a game changer, because if Premier Brandy loses that seat, ultimately he loses the government.
While no set date has been set for the hearing of these petitions, Mr. Wickham believes, based on previous trends, it may take some time. He referred to the last major election petition back in the 2011 Nevis elections, which the then opposition Concerned Citizens Movement won.
The NRP won the election, and there was a successful challenge against some voters. That process took the better part of 2 years, but once the court ordered that there would be another election, Premier Parry at the time, he essentially just dissolved Parliament and said, well, look, if I'm going to have an election in a deciding constituency, it's better that we challenge the whole thing and we go off and have them all. And he did that. He called an election. He lost that. And that was how the CCM got into power to start with, under Vance Amory. So it could probably take about 2 years. You know, election petitions tend not to be quick in the Caribbean, and I suspect that this is one that will take them a while to see how to work out. As to what will happen, I'm not sure what the court will decide, but ultimately it does seem a bit suspicious. And, you know, the swing was clearly against the CCM in every single constituency but that one. That one was the only one where there was a marginal swing in favor of the CCM. And I do find that seems a bit odd. Bearing in mind also that in Nevis, they have a large overseas vote. They have this itinerant vote, which St. Kitts has as well. And it is widely acknowledged that a number of people who are not resident in Nevis would have voted in the election. That is perfectly legal in the case of Nevis, and that point needs to be made.
The NRP is alleging that discrepancies were recorded in the Nevis 2 seat contested by Premier Mark Brantley and Patricia Bartlett of the NRP, which saw more votes cast than what was registered for at least one particular box. They also allege voter irregularities in the Nevis 1 seat, which was won by CCM's Spencer Brand and was contested by J.D. Keynes of the NRP. I'm Andre Huey for SKN Newsline.
Living in the Caribbean is like paradise until you try to sell or buy an item online. If only there was an online marketplace that caters to your region. Well, now there is. On Buy Sell SKN, you can easily buy or sell used and new items, browse for services, and it's completely free. Visit buysellskn.com, create your free account, sell your item or service, and get paid.
The SKN Newsline Sports Year Review. Join us as we recap the year 2022 in sports, regionally, internationally, and locally. From the World Cup.
Just want everything to be white.
I'm sorry, he's not yet there.
To local sports.
In the gardens, in McKnight, in Village, in Care, to want to go and play for them.
Join our panelists, LaShawn Dixon and Kenneth Bob, with me, your host, Andre Huey. That's SKN Newsline Sports Year Review. Wednesday at 8 p.m. on www.sknewsline.com or Facebook page and YouTube channel. 2022 Sports Year in Review. Budgetary support of $5 million monthly to the Nevis Island administration continues under the Labour Party administration, confirms Prime Minister Dr. Terence Drew at his monthly press conference held on Wednesday at the NEMA building.
What existed with respect to the St. Kitts Nevis arrangement, there was what you call budgetary support of, I think, $5 million per month. that still continues. However, in speaking to the Premier, he and I met very early in the term, and we had decided that we are going to put a committee together. That committee will look at matters of the relationship of St. Kitts and Nevis, the revenue sharing arrangement. As you know, the Constitution speaks to the revenues that you get through tax. It doesn't speak to non-taxable revenues, such as the CBI program. And so that committee is being put together. Just recently, I spoke to the Premier again, and he has said once he has given his throne speech that, and I think it's this week, might be tomorrow, that will sit to make sure that that committee comes together. We're going to seek external help from the experts who understand the relationship in a federation between the entities and how that arrangement can be strengthened. So we are not going to just look at it from the revenue standpoint or the sharing of revenues, but we're going to look at the Constitution and seek help in terms of how that should be done. So the questions of equity, we are seeking to settle those, and that is one. So once the committee is formed, that committee will be announced to the country. They will get to work with a specific mandate, a few of which I mentioned in my statement previously, to make sure that we can resolve that matter.
Under the Team Unity administration, the Nevis Island administration began receiving regular budgetary support from the federal government. But Premier Mark Brantley and the then Prime Minister, Dr. Timothy Harris, were at odds about the allocation of income from the Citizenship by Investment program, which is listed as a non-tax revenue. That disagreement was one of the factors that led to the collapse of the Team Unity coalition. Andre Huey, SKN Newsline. This week, a portrait of the late Honorable Malcolm Earl Gishard was unveiled by his widow, Mrs. Yvonne Gishard, in the visitor center at the Malcolm Gishard Recreational Park, 1 year after the facility was officially opened. The Nevis Island administration, through the Ministry of Tourism, took the decision to pay homage to the former Deputy Premier of Nevis and Minister of Tourism because the park was born out of his vision and his contribution to provide a green space at pennies for the people of Nevis. Premier Mark Brantley, in his presentation at the unveiling ceremony, explained the patrons' significance to what turned out to be a multi-million-dollar project.
Thank you to Mrs. Gishard and the Gishard family. We would have gone to them over a year ago and asked them if they would permit us to name this venue after Malcolm. And Mrs. Gishard, always gracious, she said yes. And she has come back on the first anniversary to again allow us to unveil a painting, which I have not seen. So I am looking forward to the unveiling of this painting. And why is this important? It's important because we have been told that visitors to the park often ask, well, who is this Malcolm Gishard? And that there was nothing there that we could point to say who it was. And so this, I believe, is significant. And I entirely endorse what the PS in Tourism, Mr. Hanley, has said, that we look forward to the erection of a bronze statue of Mr. Gishard, so that the people who are alive today, but also importantly, the people who are not alive today, but who are yet to come, will always remember the contribution of Earl Malcolm Gishard.
The event was part of a 3-day celebration of Mr. Gishard, which entailed a fun day for children on January 15, 2023, and a Nevis Taiwan exposition commemorating the 40-year friendship, collaboration, and support between the Republic of China Taiwan and the people of St. Kitts and Nevis from January 16th to 17th. I'm Andre Huey for SKN Newsline.
Living in the Caribbean is like paradise until you try to sell or buy an item online. If only there was an online marketplace that caters to your region. Well, now there is. On Buy Sell SKN, you can easily buy or sell used and new items, browse for services, and it's completely free. Visit buysellskn.com, create your free account, sell your item or service, and get paid.
the SK Newsline Sports Year in Review. Join us as we recap the year 2022 in sports, regionally, internationally, and locally. From the World Cup,
Just want everything to be white.
I'm sorry, he's not yet there.
to local sports.
In the gardens, in McKnight, in village, in Care, to want to go and play for them.
Join our panelists LaShawn Dixon and Kenneth Bob with me, your host Andre Huey. That's SK Newsline Sports Year in Review, Wednesday at 8 p.m. on www.sknewsline.com or Facebook page and YouTube channel. 2022 Sports Year in Review. Auto Plus Car Wash, located on the College Street Gut, Bastyr, St. Kitts. Bring your car to Auto Plus Car Wash to remove water stains, wiper marks. Get your doors, roof panel cleaned, seat floor mats, buffing, headlights, and engine wash. You get quality service at the best price at Auto Plus Car Wash. They really care for your car. Call 765-5140 or visit them on the College Street Gut, Bastyr, St. Kitts. Auto Plus Car Wash, where the service is number one.
I'm not a fan of private persons holding firearms. And that actually includes ex-police officers. And so, to me, and I'm making this clear, and I hope I can get support from my colleagues, I intend to take a zero-tolerance approach to firearms in our communities.
Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell's response to a question raised by a retired police officer over the payment of fees for possession of a firearm during a town hall meeting in Carriacou on the weekend.
So, I'm just letting you know my philosophy so you could get a sense of the policy that I will be pushing. Of course, I'm the Minister of National Security. I can't impose it. But if my colleagues in the cabinet support the policy, that will be the policy. We need to keep our country safe. There is a direct relationship between the amount of firearms in the community and the amount of gun violence. And so I am unapologetic about that. If you want a firearm, in my view, you should pay the fee associated with the firearm.
Wanting to ensure that Grenada remains a safe place with little to no gun violence, Prime Minister Mitchell made public his personal policy on firearms.
Persons have a right to apply, and if vetted by the police, they do have a right to be issued with a firearm. But I've indicated to the police officer, you have to, in my view, demonstrate an exceptional need for the firearm. I accept that because of the nature of work carried out by police officers, that upon retirement, they may be able to demonstrate the exceptional need for them continuing to be issued with a firearm. But I will say to you honestly, it will be a hard thing for me to suggest that they shouldn't pay the license fee if they wish to have the firearm.
The Prime Minister said that our islands are under constant threat from the importation of small firearms in particular. Prime Minister Mitchell reminds all that we should not take the safety of our country for granted.
But the idea that we should be walking around with firearms, in my view, is inimical to our culture, to our way of life. And for good measure, the last time we had a lot of firearms in Grenada, you all know what happened on the 19th of October, 1983. So I don't think we need another clear example why we should leave firearms for police officers only, and in my view, the security apparatus, unless you can demonstrate an exceptional need to have one.
Cherry and Blackman Stephen, GBN News.
Coalition of Independence leader Lincoln Bain, along with scores of his supporters, gathering outside the office of the Prime Minister to keep government's feet under fire as it relates to what they consider to be an ongoing immigration crisis in country. They say it's an issue that the Davis administration is seemingly ignoring.
They do not want to resolve this immigration issue, and this is proof of it right here. You see, when you put their back against the wall and their foot to the fire, that's when you see the truth. Don't mind their talks. These are things that they could implement, but they don't want it to be said for legal reasons. They don't want it to be said that we delivered this document to them making these demands.
Bain sought to present two officials a letter that lists a number of suggestions and recommendations by COI that they assert can immediately address the immigration issue, but Bain was blocked off by police.
What I am asking to do is for me to come in there by myself to put this in the hands of the Secretary of the Prime Minister of this country. We do not want to interfere with the Prime Minister. We do not even need to see the Prime Minister. But this is a public place. And are you going to deny my human rights? Say it so the UN can see.
Constitutional rights. Deliver it. You want me to deliver it?
I want to deliver this letter. I want my human rights. Like the Haitians have their human rights, I want my human rights to go to the office of the Prime Minister and deliver this letter.
And despite public outcry from residents across the Family Islands, where shanty towns are said to be emerging, Bain says government is being negligent.
They never appealed the injunction, which means that's exactly what they wanted. Because they could appeal to the Court of Appeal, and then they could appeal to the Privy Council. But they never did that. This is exactly what they want. They want our country to be taken over.
Now, this is not the first time Bain and his supporters would have presented their version of the citizenship bill to government and demanded that they pass it in the House of Parliament. That said, Bain is asserting that the war is far from over if government continues to put their citizenship bill amendments and suggestions on the back burner.
We are going to give this to the police, and in 14 days, we could be back. But we're going to our house this time, a public place. As simple as that.
Jose Etienne, Eyewitness News.
Now to the latest on the war in Ukraine and the deadly helicopter crash overnight near the capital. This as the mayor of Kyiv warned that critical infrastructure is at serious risk of collapsing. Matt Gutman is on the scene in Ukraine. Good morning, Matt.
Michael, good morning. We're at the site of that building that was destroyed by a Russian missile over the weekend. You can still see those workers behind me. Now, Ukraine says it's investigating the cause of that helicopter crash. What we do know is that it took out the top leadership of the Interior Ministry of this country. It also killed 3 children in that kindergarten where it crashed in that Kyiv suburb. This morning, that devastating helicopter crash outside of Kyiv, a Ukrainian emergency services helicopter slamming into a residential building, which included a kindergarten. In verified video circulating online, you can see jet fuel still burning in the courtyard, and hear the cries for help. The area littered with wreckage, including this rotor impaling a mangled car. Ukraine's interior minister, his deputy, and state secretary on board, along with 5 others. None survived. They'd been flying to what officials called a war hotspot when the helicopter reportedly lost its bearings and slammed into the building. Officials saying 16 people killed, including 3 children in that kindergarten. That as the death toll continues to rise in the Russian missile strike in the city of Dnipro. Now at 45 dead, at least a dozen remain unaccounted for. And in the coldest part of winter, the mayor of Kyiv warning that Russia's near daily onslaught of missile attacks has the country's electrical grid hanging by a thread.
We don't talk about the collapse, but can happen any second, because any second Russian rockets can destroy our critical infrastructure.
We got rare access to a power station in central Ukraine, a frequent target for Russian missile attacks.
Transformer, direct hit?
The coal-powered plant now considered a top-secret location. We go down below into the main plant, which millions rely on for electricity.
The size of this machinery almost defies comprehension, but it's something on this scale that is required to provide power to a city.
The control room like a bunker, protected by sandbags and body armor. That manager saying he needs defensive weapons from the West to keep that plant open. And to that end, we can report this morning that a vast shipment of artillery shells, probably the weapon most used right now by Ukraine, is being sent from a huge American stockpile in Israel to Ukraine. George.
Matt Gutman, thanks.
It's an image few would have imagined a year ago. The Nobel Peace Prize recipient and Philippine journalist Maria Ressa, raising her arms in victory.
Today, facts win. Truth wins. Justice wins.
It's a stark contrast from years of defeat in the court of law and at times in the court of public opinion. Ressa and her news outlet Rappler have been the subject of attacks online. and by former President Rodrigo Duterte. But on Wednesday, she was acquitted on 4 counts of tax evasion and filing inaccurate returns.
These charges, as you know, were politically motivated. So this acquittal is not just for Rappler. It is for every Filipino who has ever been unjustly accused.
Ressa cites Frenchie May Culpio, a journalist who's been detained for nearly 3 years for possession of firearms and terror financing, and Laila de Lima, the former senator who insists Duterte fabricated drug charges against her. Winning 4 cases at once offers both vindication and relief for Maria Ressa and Rappler after losing consecutive legal battles. A vindication for them and for all other Filipino journalists. But the media landscape in the Philippines remains volatile. Rappler still faces closure after the Security and Exchange Commission revoked its operating license. And Ressa could end up in prison if the Supreme Court upholds her cyber libel conviction. The country's largest news network, ABS-CBN, can't broadcast on free-to-air TV.
I think the chilling effect will always be there. It took a lot of time for that to set in. So it won't go away with just one day or with just one case. But definitely knowing that basically if you fight a case, if you stand your ground, that you have a chance of winning.
Ressa was back at work immediately after her acquittal. Rappler journalists chasing stories with renewed hope that freedom of the press is a value still cherished by many Filipinos. Barnabilo, Al Jazeera, Manila.
Now, Zyda James took the spotlight again for the West Indies as they made it consecutive wins in Group C of the ICC Under-19 Women's T20 World Cup, defeating Indonesia by 77 runs at the North University Oval on Tuesday afternoon. James, who made a half-century and took wickets against Ireland, helped herself to a classy 55 from just 37 balls. She hit a pair of sixes and added 8 boundaries to her tally as she and Chanel Tsao, who scored 31, added 95 for the first wicket. Later in the innings, Geneva Joseph chipped in with 25 from only 16 balls, with Trishan Holder hammering 35 not out from only 14 deliveries. The other 19 ladies closed their innings on 176 for 3. Joseph was the pick of the bowlers, adding 3 for 14 in 4 overs. James, Shalini Samaru and Ashmini Monisa took a wicket apiece. Indonesia eventually fell 1 run short of reaching 100 as the West Indies won their second encounter by 1 wicket.
Welcome to the SKN Newsline Weather Report. I am Janil Boone. Here is a look at the forecast for St. Kitts and Nevis. For a more detailed weather report, visit our website at www.sknnewsline.com.